Welcome back to Screen View Mirror. I'm your host Emma, and you're listening to Screen View Thoughts. On this episode, I am happy to welcome George back to the podcast to discuss what made the film Whiplash. So, welcome, George.
Welcome. Yes, glad to be here.
Great.
Again.
Yes, again. So, what a movie. What a movie. I remember watching the ending, and I wanted to just record a podcast episode about the movie straight away because it was, I think, one of my favorite film endings of all time. I don't know, there's just something about this movie. We will discover that on today's podcast episode, hopefully, that is incredible. But so let's begin. What strikes you the most about this film? Before we get into the plot or any of the acting, the techniques, what's the one factor that makes you think, okay, that's it?
It managed to come out in quite perhaps one of the more memorable years for cinema as well, where we had amazing films such as Gone Girl, Interstellar, Nightcrawler, Birdman came out that year as well. So it managed to sneak in itself through an extremely memorable year. For me, it's my top three of that year. As you know, it did start out as a short film. Because I do believe it is available on YouTube. Damien Chazelle did direct the short of it before turning it into a feature film.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure
I
if you
didn't know
checked that
that.
out as well. Yes.
That's interesting. Okay. And I think it's a
And
story
J.K.
that is
Simmons.
simple enough for it to work as a short film, I think.
Extremely,
Yeah.
extremely. I mean, the plot it's not too complicated at all. It's about artist and artistry and the struggle for perfection as well. And it's quite perhaps the best debut of a film director since Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. It's
Yeah.
Damien Chazelle's first feature film. He's already won for his later film in La La Land for Best Direction as well. Upcoming, that the trailer was released yesterday, for Babylon. But this, for me, is his magnus opus, Whiplash.
I haven't seen La La Land because I'm not really a fan of musicals. I don't know if I'll like it, but I feel like Whiplash is the nitty-gritty kind of, it's the
Yes,
less polished version of La La Land, I think. But I don't know anything
extremely.
about La La Land, so maybe I'm wrong.
Don't rush to watch La La Land. I mean,
Okay, great.
there's,
I don't like
there's,
musicals at all, so
yeah.
yeah. Okay, let's talk about, before we get into the ending or the plot or the acting, let's talk about where the movie starts us off, because that's something that really made me realize that that is going to be a great film when Damien Chazelle kind of starts us off in the dark, right? The screen is pitch black, and we hear the drum roll, and we hear the intensity of the drum roll get kind of like more intense, faster, and then it ends with a bang, like with the silence, and we see the main character Andrew in the hallway alone. Very important, kind of showing the isolation of the artist from the get-go, and we see him practicing, and then we see that slow kind of motion toward Andrew on the drums. We don't have a direct cut, which is also a powerful technique there. And then, of course, J.K. Simmons walks in, and the show starts. So what's your take on the opening and perhaps the use of color, if you want to talk about that in the opening?
Well, we do start with some plain colors as well to highlight Andrew's, like isolation and uncertainty in the start of his artistic journey as well. He knows that him himself. It's not going to be an easy start, and this is what we basically start with: that ambiguity, the uncertainty. Because even at the start, we see that J.K. Simmons, he's like a storm in a teacup, but then he just lets loose, and that's when everything just heightens, like everything just explodes. Like we see that the journey is not going to be easy. We see like the struggles, the marathon class sessions as well, and we are really thrusted upon this artist's journey in becoming, in his own way, the greatest drummer of his kind, and the sacrifices
Yes.
he has to make to get there as well.
Yes, I think that a running theme in the movie was the question, what is the price of success in whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And I think that also maybe people who aren't drummers, like athletes, for example, or people who are trying to achieve a very big kind of goal that requires a lot of work and sacrifice, relate to the character, right? The question of, well, what am I willing to sacrifice to get what I'm striving for here? And the answer, I think, at least in this movie, is the price of success is whatever you're willing to pay for it. So there's a scene in the bar where this was after Andrew messed up and he was no longer playing drums, and he sees what's his name, Fletcher. Yeah, he sees Fletcher playing the piano in the bar, and then they have a drink, and he asks him, well, but where's the line? Where's the limit? And the answer the movie gives is that there doesn't have to be a line. Of course, I mean, there should be, but there are cases where it doesn't exist, where there's no boundary, and where you can sacrifice endlessly for whatever goal you're trying to achieve, almost to like a kind of crazy level. And I think that was encapsulated so well by the ending, because the way that I read the ending was that it was not a good ending. And it was basically written on all over the face of the dad character that, okay, wow, I lost my son. He's turned into this kind of Frankenstein-like figure, playing the drums, and yeah, sure, he's brilliant, but what's the price of that brilliance, right? And it's almost like J.K. Simmons or Fletcher created this drumming monster, drumming machine, to the extent that at that last concert, the drummer was cueing the conductor. I mean, he told Fletcher, "I'll cue you," which is not really what's supposed to happen, but that's kind of, I think it shows the extent to which he wanted to prove himself and be the best. So
even before the lead up to the last greatest 15 minutes of the last decade in cinema, even before that, you could see that dedication in Andrew's eyes. I mean, he suffered the accident.
Yes.
Driving to the venue, he suffered the accident. He was limping. I don't know if he had any broken ribs or something must have been broken within him. Not his spirit.
Yes.
His spirit was not broken. He continued, and Fletcher, because these big teachers, they never want to show any sign of weakness or sympathy, because that's how they want to keep that tension going and that growth of the artist going. If Fletcher showed any signs of weakness, asking him, "Hey, Andrew, are you okay? We have to get you to a hospital." If he showed any signs of that, then that would have disrupted Andrew's journey. But having that near brush with death, the big accident, it sort of continued and paused. It paused it for a second, Andrew's journey. But then when he met him in the bar, and because I think Fletcher did it on purpose regarding the song choice. He did it on purpose to see how Andrew would react. It wasn't a form of revenge.
I feel like he did it to manipulate him. I feel like he was a very manipulative teacher throughout.
Of course.
Which I
his
mean,
insults were the best, and Damien Chazelle wrote those insults. That's what's so good about his trade as a director. A good trait of a director is to have a great balance between writing and direction, which Tarantino has, Nolan has, and now Chazelle has. All of those fantastic insults. They're not PC friendly at all. I mean, something like this would not be able to get made today. So we have to think about something like in Whiplash, because artists have to struggle. It's not an easy journey for any artist. Andrew had to go through all that. He had to improvise on the spot, and then he ended up cueing Fletcher in, before swearing at him, and then Andrew's father staring through that door, seeing a monster was being reborn.
Yeah.
In an instant, like greatest being personified as well. I really did dig the ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
I really did dig it, because it left it to your imagination.
I do like that, and I like how it was an ending that could have been the beginning toward a Whiplash Part 2 kind of story, where He's already a well-known drummer, and he's having different struggles. But overall, the movie kind of has almost like a thriller vibe to it. And I watched an interview with Damien Chazelle, who said that, yeah, 70s thrillers kind of inspired my vision of the tone for this film.
How it's filmed and the colors as well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and exactly for the colors, we see that whenever he's in his element and playing the drums, you have these really beautiful golden brown hues, like really, really warm hues. And then the rest of the film, whether he's in the movie theater with his dad or with his girlfriend or just walking outside, it's the cold, green, uncomfortable, I don't want to be here color palette. And so I think it's one of the best movies that I've seen that uses color to its advantage to convey not just the story, but how the character feels.
It's when he feels most alive. I mean, we feel most alive when we
Yes.
are in touch with our artistry, our craft. Picasso felt his most alive when he was, painting. Einstein felt most alive when he was doing his calculations, and musicians as well. Like they see the music, they feel the music, and that's projected all around them. And that's why that finale scene, you have the bright orange colors, and then when Fletcher, like, we're going to slow it down now, but we're not going to slow it down. We're going to go straight into Caravan. The high tempo, high placed amalgamation that emerged from Andrew's mind. It's sort of that FU, back to Fletch. Now you can see what I do, and this is what you have created, and we might as well go along with it. And behind the scenes, because I think Miles Teller, he is one of the best actors of his generation at the moment.
He
He's
was
been in
so brilliant.
a lot of good films, a lot of bad film. Not so, like bad films. I don't want to say anything about his film at Netflix. I don't remember, the title to that. But he was great in a mirror series, The Offer, which is sort of the behind the scene of how The Godfather was made. He
Oh,
was amazing in that. I urge you to check
I
that
haven't,
out
I
as
haven't
well.
seen
But
that. Okay, The Offer. Nice, thank you.
The Offer, Top Gun, he wasn't bad either. He did his part, projected it across greatly. But this, this is, I believe, his best acting role of what he had to go through, because he literally had to drum for like 12 hours a day,
Wow, yeah.
like behind the scenes as well. And that was projected onto the screen. And
Yeah.
that's when I feel you have an actor at their most raw form, and they're feeling the role that they are playing. When that's projected on the screen as well, their frustration, their struggle, and also, the execution at the end.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that it really carried or like his practice was carried through in the film. And I remember reading about this. I think he started playing the drums at 15, but he took extra lessons for the film, obviously, because the level of drumming seemed very complicated. I know nothing about drumming, but it seemed like a difficult feat. One last note on color. I like the fact that this is just a kind of small aside, but I like the fact that he starts off the film or the story really with a white T-shirt and ends in a black shirt, and so that kind of like shows
Sweating, blood, yes.
like the conversion to the dark side. And who wears black from the start? Fletcher. So it's almost as if Fletcher has made Andrew kind of like
Udon
his
has
own
become
character.
the master.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's something that I really enjoyed. What else? I think that the
Bearing
editing.
in mind, exactly, like bearing in mind as well, Chazelle was like 28, 27 when he was making this. So to have this as your debut film as well, because I think he really does get involved with the editing, like you were going to mention as well. That's why it was such a good pace and
Yeah.
such a good tempo, because I think he really got. He also was in the editing process along when the film was in post.
No, yeah, and even the editing that kind of began on set with just the camera movements and framing, I think that it was so effective, especially in the last scene. It's almost as if you felt like you were in the room, and not just in the room, you felt like the
Edge of my
characters,
seat.
right?
I was in
Exactly.
the edge of my seat.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, I remember after the film ended, I was in such utter shock,
Shock.
but it was
Yeah.
just shock because okay, yes, the drumming was great, but just the story and the nuances and the editing of it all. I mean, it was just so effective. So I was in shock. I rewatched the ending the next day, and I was still in that same sense of shock. And then I messaged you to do the
Exactly.
podcast episode. It's an incredible movie ending. It's an incredible movie ending.
I just kept rewinding back to the finale
Yes,
again and again and
same.
again because it really, it just took you at the front of that battlefield, this, let's say,
Yes.
war, and then a sort of understanding between the two. Because it did start out as a battle, then it turned into a war of music minds, let's say. But then the close up of the eyes,
Oh
Andrew's eyes, and
yeah.
then Fletcher's eyes, and then their understanding, and the camera pans around, and then bam.
Yeah.
It doesn't even let you breathe,
Yeah,
even when
yeah,
the
yeah,
credits start
exactly.
rolling.
Yes, 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 yes. No, I love that you mentioned that moment. I think that Fletcher said good job, but because the camera was focused just on his eyes, you could sort of make out what he was saying with his mouth because the face was kind of moving, but I think that he said that, and then as soon as the camera went back to Andrew, you could just see the happiness and the satisfaction on his face, like a kid getting a puppy. He was, I mean, the fact that in this ending, Fletcher and Andrew were able to separate their differences and understand what matters most, which is the music and the
It's the
kind of
music,
final result.
exactly.
Yeah. That just, oh, it was perfect. And I feel like even though, despite what Fletcher did to Andrew, and then despite how Andrew got his revenge on the revenge, it feels like after that performance, they would have just gone out to have a beer or something. But yeah, I mean, it was such a great movie, and something that I really liked is that the main character Andrew is he's not even a likable character. He's not that likable. You can sympathize with him, but he's not exactly a super nice guy, especially as he progresses with the film. He kind of really just places his goal above everything else, which, okay, I mean, that's understandable, but at the same time, it doesn't really make you a very kind of open and compassionate person, right? If you prioritize your goals above family and friends and all that, okay, we
Cool.
get it. You want to be the best, but you're not exactly Father of the Year award or like Friend of the Year award. So, yeah, I definitely think that being able to sympathize with a character that we know isn't exactly super nice is a very powerful way, or it takes a lot to be able to build a character like that effectively.
It's just seeing his growth as an artist, basically.
Yeah, yeah. What else? Wait, what else? We mentioned the editing. We mentioned no. Let's talk about the acting. Let's talk about the acting because I think there's a
Natural.
lot to say with the acting, and I
It,
think that the cast that was picked for this film
perfect.
could not have been picked in a better way. It was perfect. Yes.
You didn't need any A-list actors, anything
Yeah.
like that. I mean, you had some well-known actors like J.K. Simmons from his day in Spider-Man and some Coen Brothers films. You had Paul Reiser, who was a sitcom star back in the 90s with Mad About You. Melissa Benoist, who plays Supergirl. Miles Teller, who up until that point, he was in some indie films as well, some studio films too, but you didn't need that A-list cast. I mean,
Yeah.
Chazelle took his jump into the next film with an A-list cast. He did
Yeah.
First Man with Ryan Gosling, and then again La La Land with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. All right, and now Babylon with Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie. So he's really now taking his fill of like artistry, A-list actors, but. It wouldn't surprise me that after Babylon he would go back into something even like more gritty and not
Yeah.
A-list actors again. So the pick of actors was very good as well. You couldn't say they were bad acting. It was suitable acting in my opinion. Everyone got their point across. Script flowed naturally as well. So some good interaction too. But it was the intensity of J.K. Simmons, because we know him behind the scenes, let's say, or when he's doing his interviews on the red carpet. He's a likable actor, but when he steps up on the screen. He even got an Oscar for it as well. So it was executed tremendously well
Yeah, he's
by him.
the Logan of Whiplash. So, yeah, and I think one thing that this movie builds very well is a kind of mood or just a tone that it sets very well. So, for example, the tension buildups, with whether it's the him in the car rushing to the concert or the repeat
Losing the
takes.
music, yeah.
Yes, losing the music, the drumsticks falling, losing the drumsticks, the repeat takes in practice. I mean, the tension that's being built up, it doesn't need any fancy music or any special effects or anything like that. It's just, you feel the discomfort. You feel like you're the one being put on the spot by Fletcher, and you have to deliver a perfect performance. So it's really good, and I think that's kind of what ties it to the thriller 70s vibe. That discomfort, like if you watch The Conversation, that kind of tension, exactly, that kind of tension is something that I felt when watching that movie as well. So yeah, I mean, overall, it's an excellent film, and unless you have anything to add, I think we can begin to summarize what made the film if we had to pick one particular feature.
Well, again, everyone, let's say, had a teacher like Fletcher in their lifetime. I mean, when audience were watching this film, they could, sort of understand what type of individual Fletch was and what he was trying to instill upon Andrew. I mean, sometimes we may have strict teachers and masters in our times, but we have to remember that maybe sometimes it's for our own good, our own growth, but it's really it's not about the journey. It's really about the destination in this case, and what type of individual we want to become, and how we are going to be molded, and how we are going to react to moments such as what was witnessed in this movie. Yes,
Absolutely. So I think then to wrap it up, what made the film? For me, it was really, honestly, the mood, which was set by a combination of the acting and editing techniques and the use of color, but I think it was honestly the mood of the film that made it, because the story is extremely simple, and outside of the wonderful techniques that were used, the story is honestly nothing special. It's an artist trying to be great. That's it. That's all. But when you add a cast like that and a color palette like that and scenes like that and dialogue like that, the mood works and it's set. So for me, it's the mood. How about you?
can I say the tension? The tension
Yes.
differentiates from the mood.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so it was the tension. So I remember watching a sort of clip of it, seeing J.K. Simmons just not shouting that much. But then when I watched it, it starts out soft. But then at the first go, Fletcher's first appearance in the classroom, it really does set the tone. I believe, doesn't he throw an instrument at one point?
Yeah, I think he throws a chair.
Yeah, he throws a chair at one point. So immediately, that's it. It's not going to be like that type of film. There's not going to be like any happy ending, dancing bunnies or any crap like that.
Yeah.
You are thrusted into Andrew Neiman's struggle for perfection, and what he has to do to get there. And that tension, it never lets out. All right, and even at the last moment when the screen turns black, then you can breathe.
Yeah.
So yes, for me it was the tension.
All right. Well, I also agree with that. I feel like tension could be part of a mood, but I see what you mean with your distinction. So, yeah, excellent points. Unless you want to add anything, I think that just about sums it up for Whiplash.
All
So,
good.
excellent. Thank you very much once again for joining me on Screenview Mirror. This was Screenview Thoughts.